So I trust your bodies feel quite relaxed and fresh. So while they're still so, let's go directly to meditation. We'll have one more 24-minute session, go a bit further in this practice of mindfulness of breathing. So please find a comfortable posture. So now once again, but with fewer words, let's let the awareness descend into the body right down to the ground. Bring forth a quality of ease, of relaxation and comfort throughout the body, relaxing tension, softening the muscles. So settle your body in its natural state with the three qualities of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. Settle the flow of your respiration in its natural rhythm. Relaxing deeply with every out-breath, releasing the breath fully, releasing thoughts and memories with every exhalation. And then at the end of the exhalation, simply allow the next breath to flow in effortlessly, with no control, just allowing the body to breathe. Then set your mind at ease, releasing all concerns about the future and the past. Releasing all desire and aversion. Let your awareness come to rest in stillness in the present moment, hovering lightly in the immediacy of the present moment. And resting in the natural clarity, the natural brightness and alertness of your own awareness. In this way, settle your mind in its natural state of ease, stillness, and clarity. And then, like a lamp that remains stationary, but illuminates an entire room and all the activities, the movements within the room. Let your awareness remain still, resting right where it is. But let the light of your awareness illuminate the whole space of the body. No need to visualize the body, no need to think about the body. Simply be aware of your immediate experience of this field of tactile sensations with its diverse sensations of solidity, of fluidity, of warmth and cold, and all types of movement, including tingling, vibration, pulsing, and the fluctuations throughout the body corresponding to the in and out breath. Note whatever type of appearances or experiences arise within this field. Not only the tactile sensations corresponding to earth, water, fire, and air, but there are bound to arise also feelings. Feelings of discomfort, neutral feelings, perhaps feelings of comfort or even pleasure. Note whatever arises within the field of the body from moment to moment. As the Buddha stated in his discourse to Bahia, in the felt let there be just the felt. And that is simply be present with, be mindful of whatever arises within this tactile field from moment to moment. Observing its nature but without identifying with it, without labeling, without superimposing, without projecting. Simply be present with whatever's arising from moment to moment within this tactile field of experience. Observing tactile sensations as tactile sensations, somatic feelings as somatic feelings. See them for what they are, devoid of the superimpositions of I and mine. See them for what they are. Sensations, feelings arising within the space of the body. Now within this field, let's focus a bit more selectively as we shift to the practice of shamatha for the refinement of attention. Focus now within this diverse field of sensations and feelings. Focus specifically on those fluctuations, those movements, those sensations throughout the body that are clearly correlated with the in and outflow of the breath, the flow of the respiration. is utterly central to this practice. To sustain to the best of your ability a flow of cognizance, a flow of knowing. It's not enough just to have a quiet mind, a blank mind. You could be spacing out, falling into a trance. That's not the point of this practice. But to sustain a flow of knowing, of clear cognizance, even without the conceptualization, the labeling, the conceptual associations. So we give ourselves a very simple task. When the in-breath is long, note that it is long. When the out-breath is long, note that it is long. As you settle down, as you calm the body and calm the mind, it's quite natural that your body will need less oxygen, which means the breath will become shallower. So when the in-breath is short, note that it is short. When the out-breath is short, note that it is short. So in this practice, we are cultivating mindfulness of the in and out breathing. And mindfulness here refers to the faculty of mind by which we're able to bear in mind what we're attending to without distraction and without forgetfulness. So it's by way of mindfulness that we're able to sustain the focus as continuously as possible on the sensations of the in and out flow of the breath without being distracted elsewhere and without forgetfulness, without drifting off or losing clarity. In this practice, as in all other meditative practices, we need to utilize and refine this faculty of mindfulness. But in addition, we also utilize and refine another mental faculty called sambhajanya in Pali, which I will translate as introspection. It is that faculty of mind by which we are able to monitor the flow of mindfulness, by which we're able to detect when the attention goes astray, we fall into rumination, mind wandering, the mind becomes distracted. We note that with the faculty of introspection. was noted introspectively after the fact. As soon as you note that your attention has been carried off, probably by some thought or memory, that your first response be to relax, to loosen up. Then release whatever captivated your attention, drew you away. Let it go. Then return to the present moment, return to the object of mindfulness, the sensation throughout the body corresponding to the respiration. So note the mind wandering with your faculty of introspection, and then to bring your attention back, relax, release, and return. It's also with the faculty of introspection that we note when clarity has faded, or falling into laxity, dullness, getting spaced out, sitting with merely a vacuous mind. So as soon as you note introspectively that clarity has diminished, then balance the mind. First of all, refresh your interest. Restore your attention and retain the flow of mindfulness. So in response to dullness, laxity, refresh, restore, and retain. In this way, balance your attention. Again, coming back to the core. Sustain the awareness of the stillness of your own awareness, resting right where it is, not moving out, not carried away by thoughts, not carried away by the sensations of the breath, but observing them from the vantage point of stillness. And from that stillness, observing the ebb and flow, the movements corresponding to the breath. Gently arousing and focusing with each in-breath, quietly, alertly. With each out-breath, release any extraneous thoughts that may have come to mind. Relax the body, relax the mind. Arousing and relaxing while sustaining the flow of cognizance, of engaged mindfulness throughout the entire cycle of the breath. And let's continue practicing now in silence. So I'd like to cover just one short statement by the Buddha and then have some time for discussion, question and answer. And I would like to have the people in the auxiliary room fully participant, that you're not second-class citizens. And so even though I can't see you, I think you can probably see me, or at least you can hear me. So if you have any questions or comments, people living in the adjacent room, please feel right to write them down. We'd like to make sure you're fully included here and in no way peripheral. And what I'd like to do in this one short quote is simply tie together two strands of what I've already discussed this morning. We're talking on the one hand about developing attention skills, which really everybody could do to their advantage, the qualities of relaxation, stability, clarity, and with this method, so strongly encouraged by the Buddha, of mindfulness of breathing for that purpose, to balance the attention, exactly to prevent and overcome what nowadays is called ADHD. Attention deficit is laxity, and attention hyperactivity is excitation, distraction, right? To balance the mind. So to my mind, this should be taught to every child in school from age 4 or 5 onwards. You can teach it to children. There's some really good experts in that field as kind of preventative medicine, so they don't get ADHD, they don't get their minds all hyperactivated by modernity. So there's that point, but there's the other point I was making about mundane and then authentic well-being and happiness. And with specifically within the context of sila, samadhi, panya, of samadhi, that sense of well-being, that sukha that's related to samadhi, and then more specifically with respect to this particular practice of mindfulness of breathing. And the Buddha gave an analogy here, which I found enormously meaningful. And here it is from the Pali Canon. The Buddha gives this analogy, and that is just as in the last month of the hot season. So I've lived in India for 6 years, I know when this is. The last month of the hot season before the monsoon begins, it's early June. Because the monsoon comes in mid-June, right? And then it gets cooler, lots and lots of rain until mid-September. It's pretty regular, has been. Who knows what will happen with global warming. But you get to late May and early June, and it just, I've been to Delhi, the Gangetic Plain, and it's hot, it's sultry. And it's not just modernity and all the smog and pollution from nowadays. It was 2,500 years ago. So here's the Buddha referring to that period, just before the monsoon hits. It's really quite awful. You know, in Delhi, it can be 120 degrees Fahrenheit. What's that, 45 or something like that? Maybe even higher, Celsius. But here's the analogy. The Buddha says, just as in the last month of the hot season, just before monsoon hits, when a mass of dust and dirt has swirled up, imagine on such an occasion, imagine a great rain cloud out of season disperses and quells it on the spot. So before monsoon comes in, just a rain cloud comes and there's just this cloudburst. Suddenly just that, a whole bunch of rain, just a torrent of rain coming down in that hot season. What would that be like? The grime, the griminess, all the dirt and dust in the air, and then suddenly this rain burst. What would that be like? Well, suddenly, he said, all that dust and dirt that swirled up, this great rain cloud disperses and quells it on the spot. Just in a matter of seconds. The air is fresh, it's crystal clear, very refreshing, right? So there's his analogy, and here's how he's going to relate that to the anapanasati samadhi, the samadhi by way of mindfulness of in and out breathing. He says, so too, concentration by mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated. In other words, don't expect a quick fix, but by practicing it day after day, gradually cultivating, developing these qualities of relaxation, stability, clarity, by way of mindfulness of breathing, when you really become more and more adept at this practice, cultivating your attention skills, when developed and cultivated, this concentration by mindfulness of breathing is peaceful. And he's going to say 3 things: peaceful and sublime and ambrosial dwelling. That's what he states, just for starters. There's a bit more to come, but that will keep us busy for a little while. Doing this practice, which is ever so simple, and very importantly, we're focusing here on sensations that generally are not by nature pleasant. Like gelato on a hot summer day, that's pleasant. Sparkling water when it's really hot, it's pleasant. And many things are pleasant, right? And many things are unpleasant. The pleasant tends to arouse craving, attachment, and desire, right? The unpleasant tends to arouse aversion, dislike, maybe even hostility or anger, right? But when we encounter a neutral sensation, just like, I think this is just fine. This is a good example of neutral. It's fine. But it's just water. It's just water. So I'm not going to get addicted to this, attached. I just have to drink more and more because I'm so addicted to it. But there's nothing unpleasant about it either. You know exactly what it is. That's pretty neutral, right? So they didn't give me soda pop, you know. They didn't give me anything really delicious. I don't want anything delicious. I'm here just to practice Dharma, not to enjoy myself drinking. So in a similar way, just like room temperature water, needed, but nothing to get attached to, but certainly nothing for which to feel aversion either. In a similar fashion, when we're attending to the sensations of the breath, those sensations don't tend to be pleasant or unpleasant. They don't tend to arouse either craving or aversion or anger, hostility, right? Neutral. So there you are. In other words, you're not focusing on something that is by nature pleasant, which will arouse laukika sukha, mundane pleasure, because that comes in response to something happening to you that's pleasant, right? Like breathing. I mean, I was just off at the Chinese temple, very, very fragrant incense there, very pleasant. I've smelled a lot of incense in my time. There are perfumes, there's a smell of really tasty food, and so on and so on. Sometimes the fragrance of flowers or nature. Oh, nice, you want to go near it. Where did it come from, right? Pleasant, pleasant, pleasant. Some, of course, are unpleasant. But this is just, and the pleasant, the same thing, arouses attachment, the unpleasant aversion. Here we're attending to sensations that are by nature neutral. In other words, doing this practice is not going to arouse hedonic pleasure or mundane pleasure, because the sensation is not by nature pleasant. It's neutral, right? That's actually important. It turns out to be important. So there you are. Imagine doing this practice, but not just for 24 minutes. Imagine you do it for a week, doing it regularly, 1 or 2 sessions a day. For a month, you're cultivating, developing, you're getting better at it. More relaxed, more composed, more clear. Then the first thing the Buddha says is this samadhi turns out to be peaceful. That could be expected. You could have predicted that. Because when the mind is agitated, it's turbulent, that's not peaceful. It's kind of annoying, it's draining, it's exasperating, frustrating, upsetting, and so on. Not pleasant. Just have a mind that's out of control. Your uncontrolled elephant is not something happy to watch. And so that was predictable. That you do, and I would suggest, this is now an interpretation. He says peaceful. What I would suggest, one interpretation of this is, by engaging in this practice and becoming more and more adept at it, you experience a deepening sense of ease, of looseness. Your shoulders drop. Your face, just like your face right now, very relaxed, loose. I don't see any anxiety, tension. I see nothing in your face right now. And I presume mine is you. You're also. A lot of very relaxed faces here. And so just a sense of ease, and ease in the body. And the mind feels at ease, relaxed, comfortable. I think that's what he's referring to when he says peaceful. So, some of the first studies of meditation ever done by Herbert Benson, for example, studying transcendental meditation. He wrote a book that was called Relaxation Response. If you meditate, you feel more relaxed. It's good. Whether it's Christian meditation, centering prayer, TM, and so on, meditation should give you a greater sense of ease. This one does. So that's the first point. And a lot of us who are chronically stressed out, driven, agitated, and so forth, this is a step in the right direction. So the Buddha said this practice, when cultivated and developed, is peaceful. That's predictable. But it doesn't stop there. In other words, there's more to this practice than a relaxation response, more to mindfulness than simply stress reduction. That's a good start. But for heaven's sakes, let's not pretend that's the essence of all of Buddhist meditation. Unfortunately, there's a lot of false marketing around the mindfulness movement. It's not the essence of Buddhist meditation. It's not Buddhism with a Buddhist meditation without Buddhism. It's not the essence of all meditation. It's preschool. And preschool is really good. It's just what the doctor ordered if you haven't been to preschool yet. But then don't stay there forever, for heaven's sakes. And so it's peaceful. That's good. But the Buddha doesn't stop there. When cultivated and developed, it's peaceful. But then he goes on beyond that. And he says, it's sublime. Now, the Buddha didn't use words loosely or just kind of hyperbole, just exaggerating, like people in marketing and sales representatives and advertising and so forth. They'll often really exaggerate. This is the ultimate driving machine. This will, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of that just to sell the product. There's been a lot of marketing of mindfulness. There was a lot of marketing of yoga, and that's just one more piece of merchandise to sell, and a lot of money is being made on it. Well, the Buddha was not doing that. He was not a marketer. He was not propaganda. He was not advertising. He was simply sharing the Dharma. And when he said something, I really think he simply meant what he said. And he said, when developed and cultivated, this samadhi is sublime. Now that's an interesting term. So I think it's not my translation. I know a lot of Pali terms, but I'm not fluent in Pali. So I'm just relying on expert translators. So he says sublime. Now a person who's never meditated before, you say, Really? I mean, if you listen to a Mozart symphony, or if you go to the Himalayas and see the grandeur of the mountains, or you see a magnificent sunset, and so forth, then you might say sublime. Or the statues of Michelangelo, that's sublime. Poetry, some poetry is sublime. Okay, we know what sublime is. Mindfulness of breathing? I mean, come on, breathing in, breathing out. Where's the sublime part, right? He's not talking about sublime sensations. What is sublime? The concentration, the anapanasati samadhi. The samadhi is sublime. Now that's the term he chose, and not loosely, and it's not hyperbole or exaggeration or marketing. He meant exactly what he said. Sublime is a strong term, right? We know how we don't use that word casually, right? Sublime. And what I would suggest here, now this is that's what he said, here's my interpretation. That he's referring to sukha, a quality of sukha, a quality of well-being that he calls sublime. Now, eating a delicious meal, I wouldn't call that sublime. I'd say it's a really tasty meal. And that's beautiful music. But he's talking of a quality of awareness, a quality of mind that is sukha. That's what my interpretation. A quality of well-being, sukha. It's one of the 5 jhana factors, sukha. And my interpretation of it, I'm thinking it's pretty close, is that it's exactly that quality of well-being. It's a very good translation. We're not talking about ecstasy or bliss or anything like that, nothing, like, wow, like that. But if you say, how are you? If you say, I'm suffused with a sense of well-being, that sounds pretty good. Clearly in the realm of sukha, something definitely good, but well-being is a nice translation. Well-being of the body, well-being of the mind is a symptom of a mind that is balanced. Insofar as the mind is subject to agitation, ADHD, mental afflictions, craving, anxiety, anger, resentment, jealousy, and so forth, if that's what the mind is dominated by, it's dukkha. It feels uneasy. It does not feel sublime. It is not well-being. You feel out of sorts. You feel ill at ease. You don't feel good. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing that you don't feel good when your mind is dominated by mental afflictions. Otherwise, you'd never do anything about them. You'd remain afflicted and say, I feel fine. As you're angry, malevolent, jealous, greedy, and so forth, I'm feeling fine all the way through. Well, then you'd never practice Dharma. Oh, no, I'm enjoying my mental afflictions. Right? Yeah. And so the symptom of a mind that is out of balance, either attention laxity or excitation, a mind that is prone to craving or to hostility, the symptom of that is it feels ill at ease, dukkha. The symptom of a mind that's being brought to balance, relaxed, poised, clear, the symptom is well-being. And the Buddha is calling that a sublime type of well-being. It is satsukha. It's sublime well-being. That's the term, sat. Sat as divine, sacred, sublime, sat, right? And then, or samma in Pali, authentic. This is not a sense of well-being that's arising in response to some pleasant stimulation. Because bear in mind, ever so importantly, the stimulation is neutral. It's not pleasant or unpleasant. It's breathing. It's sensations of breath, right? But he calls it sublime. He's referring here now to a sublime well-being that's arising not in response to some pleasant stimulation, but is arising from your own mind. Your mind is the wellspring of this, and it's not responding to pleasant. It's bringing the quality of the sublime to the sensation, to the practice, to your life. It's not something you're getting, something that comes from within. Sublime. Now we can pause just there for a moment, and that is one of the hindrances to really developing one's attention skills, moving along the path of samatha, eventually actually achieving first jhana. One of the primary obstacles to that, obscurations, hindrances, is being fixated on pleasant stimulations. It's called sensual craving. Well, it's really not just sensual, like seeing or tasting or smelling. It's called, in Tibetan I know the term, it's it's attachment to the allures of the desire realm. So that's not just sensual. visual, the auditory. It's also intellectual, it's aesthetic, but it's also the craving, the fixation, the attachment that we have for intangibles like reputation, like power, or just looking at your bank account and seeing a lot of zeros after an integer, not before, and saying, oh, wow, I'm wealthy, Oh, I'm powerful. I have a big reputation. People love me. People admire me. Oh, I'm a celebrity. That also, it's not sensual, but people can be extremely attached to it. And so, insofar as our attention is fixed on and we're attached to these allures from the surrounding environment, the sensual, of course, being attached to any of the five senses, attached to the more intangible things like wealth, prestige, power, and so forth. Insofar as that's where our attention is going, that's where our effort is going, that's where we're spending our time, guess what chance you have of really discovering authentic well-being? Pretty much zero. Because your attention's all out there. Oh, who will do it? Where's the woman? Where's the man? Where's the job? Where's the car? Where's the position? Where's the status? Where's the place? And so forth. Always looking outward, outward, outward. Well, that's not evil, but you have no chance of discovering anything inwards if your attention is totally focused outwards, right? If you're always trying to avoid unpleasant stimuli and then scurrying after more pleasant stimuli, if you can't stand silence, if you can't stand quiet and inactivity, but immediately fill the space with more activity, more stimulation. You go into the doctor's office, you can't possibly just sit there. You need to pick up one of those 2-month-old magazines. I don't know what it's like in Singapore, but they always give you old magazines in America because they figure you'll read anything. You don't need a new magazine. He'll give you the leftovers that he read a month ago because you figure he's got you a captive audience. You have to wait until the doctor comes. And the last thing you'll want to do is just sit there quietly. So they'll just throw rubbish in front of you. And you'll pick it up because what else is there to do? We are addicted to stimulation, more so than I think in any previous period of human civilization. We are addicted to doing and to being stimulated. We can't buy blue jeans without having music in the background. You can't eat without having music in the background. You can't be in an elevator in many places without having some kind of television screen in an elevator. Have you seen that? I have. Like you can't possibly spend 13 seconds in the elevator without seeing a television screen. And if you don't have one, ring your cell phone. We're so fixated, and we are basically getting our whole younger generation addicted from the age of 5. I've seen my grandson. The cell phones, the video games, the stimulation. And so if that's where we're fixated, the chances of discovering and cultivating authentic well-being, 0. For the simple reason the attention is directed elsewhere, right? So here's a practice where we're not attending to or scurrying after pleasant stimulation or trying to withdraw from unpleasant stimulation. In a continuing fashion, we're sustaining the mindfulness of something quite neutral, but soothing. Soothing the ebb and flow. Not really pleasant, otherwise people would hyperventilate. If you like this, you must really like this. If you really get addicted, but we don't do that because it's not intrinsically pleasurable. We just let the breath flow. So Sublime, it's actually a really big point. You can tell my gray hair, I'm a hippie generation, so way back in the Vietnam War, we had a very famous bumper sticker. You're not too far away from my age. Remember the bumper sticker? Give peace a chance. Anybody ever hear of that one? Give peace a chance. The Vietnam War, give it a chance. Or the way to peace. There is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Ever heard of that one? Because we have so many wars justified. This is the way to peace. We have to kill a whole lot of people. And after we killed enough of them, then we'll have peace. People have been saying that for centuries. We want peace. You just have to kill these people first. It's still going on, of course. Still going on, always justified. We want peace, but we have to kill all these people first. And the old hippies used to say, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Well, that's good. That's what the Buddha said. So, between mundane pleasure and genuine happiness, give peace a chance. And that is, don't fill the vacuum at all times with stimulation and doing. Sometimes be willing to just sit. And turning away from the pursuit of pleasant stimulation, trying to avoid unpleasant stimulation, hang in there and focus your attention with balance, relaxation, stability, clarity, on neutral sensations, And lo and behold, you make one of the most important discoveries about the nature of the mind ever made. And that is you can find bliss, you can find a sense of well-being, happiness, with independently of any pleasant stimulation. All you have to do is breathe. And that's kind of a given until you die. It's already there, right? So the Buddha said sublime. It's a loaded term. Peaceful, yeah, you're relaxed. And then the sublime is this peace of mind that is pleasant. You like it. It's an inner peacefulness, a sublime quality of stillness, of clarity. And you don't want to stop. When you start enjoying it, you don't want to stop. You're probably experiencing a sense of well-being. He doesn't stop. I need to stop quickly. We have some time for discussion here. And then the third one is, we're not finished yet. This samadhi is peaceful and sublime, an ambrosial dwelling. Now that's really big terminology. Ambrosial dwelling. That's beyond sublime, right? It starts with peaceful, then it goes sublime, and then it goes ballistic to ambrosial dwelling. And this is really strong terms. Ambrosia. Wow. And what I would suggest here, that's what he said, that it's kind of like a crescendo, culminating in an ambrosial dwelling while you're watching the sensations of the in and out breath. That's bland, right? Neutral. But an ambrosial dwelling, well, the ambrosial dwelling is not in your nose. It's in your mind. It's coming up. Your mind becomes an ambrosial dwelling. I will interpret this as the Pali term is pitti. It's another of the jhana factors. It's joy. It's delight. It's enjoyment. It's really finding bliss. And this is a discovery not yet made by modern psychology. I've never read a scientific paper, not one, and I've read a lot of them, psychological paper. I've not read one in the whole field of cognitive science that says when you calm your mind, you will discover bliss arising at the very nature of your awareness itself. And why not? Because they're not doing it. They're not doing it. Psychology is almost entirely about hedonic. Almost entirely about it. Avoiding displeasure, avoiding depression, anxiety, pain, and so forth, and finding something that makes you happy. Almost entirely about that. It's almost entirely mundane. Right? And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's not sustainable. And you keep on needing to have those happy thoughts, those positive thoughts, that reinforcement, that positive reinforcement. Take it away, it's gone. Whereas here we're tending to something that doesn't give us pleasure in the first place. It's neutral. But then out of this comes pitti, a sense of bliss, joy. And it's just true. I mean, I've been teaching meditation for 40 years, and I've listened to a lot of people now. And so many doing something so simple as mindfulness of in and out breathing, finding bliss arises. It may arise somatically, quite remarkable. And I've heard it so many times, I can't doubt it. And I've done a bit of practice myself. But I listen to other people, and bliss arising in the body. What's going on here? You're just following your breath. But it happens a lot. And the deeper you go, bliss arising from the mind. And you might want to say, hallelujah, it's like an ambrosial dwelling. Well, the Buddha discovered this, but it wasn't just his discovery. It's thousands upon thousands and thousands, over hundreds and hundreds of years, of people who discovered this is the nature of the mind. Give peace a chance. Samatha means peace, tranquility, serenity. And you discover for yourself another whole bandwidth, another whole dimension of well-being and happiness and joy that is not stimulus dependent. And it's authentic because it's rooted in reality and not in good fortune, being lucky, or having nice things happen to you. But he's still not finished. That's quite something, isn't it? Those three simple terms, peaceful, sublime, and ambrosial dwelling, by doing something so bland and neutral as following the sensations of your breath, noting the in-breath, noting the out-breath. He's not finished. One more point, and then I'll have a little bit of time for conversation. And that is, that is this samadhi, by mindfulness of breathing, it disperses and quells on the spot. Remember, like that cloudburst? Disperses and quells on the spot all the dust and dirt in the air. This samadhi, it disperses and quells on the spot unwholesome or evil states whenever they arise. And that is unwholesome states of mind. Anger, resentment, greed, and so forth and so on, the whole array of akusala, unwholesome states of mind, or afflictive, the kilesa, afflictive states of mind. This one is something like a balm for the mind, and it disperses and quells on the spot these these harmful, these disruptive, these afflictive disturbances of the mind, all stemming from mental afflictions, basically delusion, craving, and hostility, these impulses come up. They're bound to come up. They come up with your meditating. But insofar as you develop and cultivate this quality of samadhi, then even when mental afflictions come up, unwholesome states of mind come up, they don't get any footing. It's kind of like you have a Teflon mine and they have a very hard time sticking. They come up and then they just dissipate. So what he's saying, this is an extraordinary statement he's saying with a marvelous analogy. He's saying this, what this practice is doing, if we put it in modern terminology, this practice is elevating your psychological immune system. Now that's modern terminology. Your psychological immune system. And that is just like if your immune system is low, is kind of really depressed, you're tired, fatigued, not good diet and so forth. If you're with somebody who catches a cold, you're going to get a cold, right? And likewise for other contagiosity. It's around, you're going to get it. Because your defenses are down. HIV means your whole system is shot and you can get anything, right? And so that's a physically, your immune system is down, which means you're vulnerable. It's only a matter of time, tick, 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 before you're going to come down with something, because you're going to catch whatever's there, right? Now that's the body. What about the psychological immune system? And that is over the media especially, watching television, the news, for example, in America, heaven forbid, watching the electoral process going on right now, and the type of abuse, the contempt, the slander, the lying. It's just like a stream of non-virtuous speech. It seems like it's almost all non-virtuous speech, especially from, oh, never mind. But you listen to that. You listen to that. And this is just watching a person I've never seen either of the candidates for American politics. But watch what happens. When you see that type of invective, that type of contempt, disdain, hatred, bigotry, and so forth and so on, see whether it's contagious. And the answer is yes, about 40% of the American population have caught the bug. And supporting a man who is advocating racism and advocating torture, advocating mass murder, he said so, kill all the families of ISIS. I am getting a bit political here, but I find this horrific. I really do find it horrific. Not as a just horrific. Not as a person following this party or that party, but any person who wants to lead a country who's advocating torture and racism and mass murder, that gives me the creeps. I am very, very concerned about this. But what happens when you encounter one person speaking out of contempt, hatred, greed, and so forth? Contagious. Contagious. Not, of course, with a virus. All you have to do is get the information. And the information comes in, you see somebody expressing this type of attitude, and if you have the propensities, the seeds, the predispositions for these mental afflictions, as I do, I have the capacity for contempt, hatred, greed, and I have all the mental afflictions, which means I'm vulnerable, right? So I have those mental afflictions. I'm not a liberated being by any means, which means if I encounter people expressing hatred, contempt, and so forth, it's very easy for them to trigger those same mental afflictions in my mind stream. I come down with it. So if I see a person behaving in a contemptible way, it's very easy to experience contempt. Oh, I'm superior to you. I'm better than you. You're awful. I'm good. We hear a person expressing abuse, and it's very easy to say, you're terrible. You, right? Anger is very contagious. Greed is contagious. Contempt, hatred, bigotry, contagious all the way through. And the awful thing is it's contagious with no physical transmission at all. There's no bug. It's information. You get it off the internet. You get it from the telephone. Get it for conversation. You get it right by reading an email. This is super contagious, right? And so in this world we're living in today, where there's an awful lot of mental afflictions out there, a lot of evil taking place in the world, how do we elevate our psychological immune system so that we can listen to people who are expressing hatred and bigotry and contempt and engaging in all the four non-virtues of lying, abuse, contempt, and idle gossip? Listen to it all, take it in, and not have that catalyze the same tendencies in our own mind, and not have that catalyze the type of speech from our own mouths, in which case then we become part of the problem, right? How can we elevate our immune system so that we can be listening to and engaging with people who are expressing very strong mental afflictions and not have those catalyze the same mental afflictions in our own mind stream. It's very easy to happen. It's happening a lot. But if we respond with contempt to people who are contemptible, what's the difference? What's the difference? And here's a practice. Do this simple practice, mindfulness and breathing. And he says it dispels and quells on the spot. Disperses and quells on the spot. Afflictive tendencies coming up. So you see an impulse of contempt coming up, but you're aware of it with this mind that's very balanced, and it subsides. You see craving coming up, it subsides. You see arrogance coming up, and it subsides. Anger coming up, and it subsides. This practice, so simple. Tremendous benefit by cultivating that balance of mind. Right? So I said there'd be time for discussion, but I think that's immensely rich. And I don't think he exaggerated one iota. I think it's a valid, accurate description. When developed and cultivated, this elevates your psychological immune system so you don't have to protect yourself, so you only engage with nice people, dharma people, virtuous people. You engage with people. And some are display very disagreeable behavior, harmful attitudes, and you don't fall into it. You can listen with a mind that's serene, quiet, attentive, and even compassionate. Because that's really the fork in the road. When you see somebody, a politician or anybody else, and they're expressing some virulent mental affliction, like contempt or hatred, we can fall into that. We can withdraw into aloof indifference, say, not my problem, kind of go like that, put up the shield. Or there's another alternative. Compassion. Compassion. These people are afflicted, really afflicted. They're perpetuating their own suffering. They're perpetuating the suffering of others. They're in suffering, creating more suffering for the future. Compassion. And if that's what it arouses, when we witness hatred, bigotry, and so forth and so on, if this arouses compassion, then we can call ourselves Dharma practitioners. Right? Hola so. Any quick comment or observation? We have time to take our break, but is anything coming up quickly? Time is short. All right, let's take our break. We'll come back at 1:30. But I would hope and anticipate that for the next hour and a half, you'll continue breathing. Please do. That's my request. In case you are wondering, shall I or shall I not? Please continue breathing. And if you're continuing breathing, then your breathing is inviting you to continue practicing all the way through the break. Because there it is. Breathing in, breathing out. Maintain that flow of presence, of mindfulness, that sense of ease, a sense of stillness, inner composure, the clarity. And then when we come back to practice, and we'll start with meditation when we come back, it'll be seamless. You're not coming from a lot of agitation and commotion of the mind and then trying to calm it down. You'll already be calmed down, and then you go deeper. Okay? See you at 1:30.